What's up, Clean Freaks? It's Hank Balch back in studio with Kyle Louie for this Now You Know Big Data series. And if you missed episode 1, go back, check it out. Very helpful introduction to what big data is. But on this episode, we're going to jump right in to the gaps around business intelligence for sterile processing and how that impacts the operating room, Kyle. So what is the gap? What are we missing? What's the big honking hole in the side of the hospital here when it comes to data and business intelligence?
I'm going to say one of two things. It is either sterile processing capacity, right? So really understanding how much can we push through our sterile processing. And 2 is going to be the preference cards. Which way you want to go?
Oh, man. Oh, well, yeah, those are 2 fantastic episodes. Our 2 fantastic examples. Let's maybe start with the preference cards, because everybody, like you say, pref cards, we all want to poke our eyes out, pull our hair out, because we all know that these babies have been broken in so many ways. But yeah, where's the brokenness at, and why is that such a systemic gap out there?
Totally. I love the term systemic gap, because it really is a result of well-intentioned people over a long period of time trying to do the right thing without having the same sheet of music to go off of to make sure that the result is impactful or sustainable. So you look at a preference card, new doctor coming in, you're spinning up a new tray, and you need to put something as simple as a major basic set in there, right? I mean, inside the ORT list, you open that thing up and you have 90 different examples of that major basic tray. Somebody didn't want to scroll down and select one that existed, so they typed a new one in. Someone typed it wrong, or they put major basic tray, or tray major basic, or general dash major tray, or maybe a location in front of it, right? No sheet of music going off of it. So over time, this thing starts to compound. And at the end of the day, only one of those records, if at all, actually points to an accurate tracking system ID number, which is where, as sterile processing guys, what we care about, because that's what's going to show where the location is, what goes in it, how many of them we have. So when these systems are misaligned from a preference card perspective, obviously it's a pain in the butt just to get like the right thing to the right room on time sterile. But from like a tray management or growth strategy perspective, it's impossible for us to know how our trays are actually being utilized in the rooms, if at all. So from a database perspective, I mean, essentially garbage in, garbage out, right? There's so many options. And I don't think anyone's done a study like this, but I'd be super interested to see across everybody's preference cards, like what percentage of those items actually connect to a tracking system reference number. I bet you it's 15%.
Yeah. Folks would be really shocked at just how manual that process is still today, and how dependent it is on these already busy coordinators of these service lines. They've got everything else going on, and then they come back to their office at the end of the day, and there's a stack of these preference cards, and all these changes need to be updated. And you're right, if there's no standard process, if there's no kind of technological channels that they're going down, you just end up with just hodgepodge over years and years and years that, have been digitized in electronic format, right. But it's not actually solved the problem. So, the capacity piece is another one that you brought up. And I know in episode 1, you got onto your little soapbox, but I'm going to get on my soapbox here for this capacity piece, because what's really challenging for sterile processing is we are really good at getting it done no matter what. Right? Like we feel the weight on our shoulders. We don't have enough washers. We don't have enough trays, but we know there's patients that are waiting at the other end of this department that need us. And we found a way for years and years and years to get it done. But I think now we're finally hitting that tipping point that we just can't get it done anymore. We have burned out, we've pushed out, and now we're at the stage where the capacity is really starting to hit us in the face. So speak to that a little bit. Why is that a gap in your opinion?
Took the words out of my mouth, Hank. Sterile processing is a department of hardworking, intelligent, caring people that are underfunded, underappreciated, and really unknown when it comes to the perioperative cycle. At the end of the day, instruments are getting to the room and the patient is getting taken care of. Therefore, from an administrative perspective, sterile processing is fine. Not at all, man. I use this example a lot. When it comes to doing the job, if you ask to do the job faster without any more resources, the first thing that gets sacrificed is quality, right? How many sterile processing departments wish they could do things like random quality audits? Or how many sterile processings are even skipping, foundational industry regulation steps like function checking, because they don't have time to pull out the scissor testing tape or the kerosene punch cards and actually do it, because they have 500 trays that are sitting outside of the mechanical washers waiting for an assembly table. Right. So from I guess to connect to our conversation around data, there are hard stops inside the reprocessing cycle that cannot be accelerated, right? The amount of time an item has to soak per an IFU, the cycle time on a mechanical washer, the sterilization cycle and dry time, right? Well, maybe dry time is acceptable because it seems like IUSS is a standard practice now for reprocessing, right? Because,
oh, please.
yeah, I knew that one would get you, man. But it's because of this increased preference and demand for speed that is resulting in a sacrifice of quality. So the gap that we're seeing from a data perspective and kind of what we've seen how this can be solved is a balance between what sterile processing has the capabilities to put out, meaning can our equipment handle this level of growth? Do we have the inventory available on hand? I'm not talking about like somewhere in the hospital, but I'm talking up sterile on the shelf that can keep up with the needs list and the priority list, as well as quick turns with backup inventory. And do we have people, enough people to manage those touch points and equipment and ensure that the quality component is happening? Because right now in so many hospitals and in the growth strategy that I've seen to catch up to these years worth of lost elective cases in the pandemic, we're going to just increase totals by 20% because DRG indexes on those are good and we're going to get high reimbursement for it. And it's an orthopedic case. And I know my average tray for orthopedic cases is 7 because that's what Epic tells me, right? Well, let's not forget that, again, from a data perspective, orthopedic cases ties in total knee and hips with little carpal tunnel cases and little sports med, cases. So from an average perspective, there's going to be an over and under. And of course, it's going to be totals, which is massively a higher resource requirement for sterile processing that often gets selected for this growth strategy, right? So from a capacity perspective, I think balancing what sterile processing is able to do is much more different than balancing what sterile processing is willing to do.
Right. Yeah. And even like I know you referenced, we're talking kind of about hospital growth, but even the clinic growth that's related to and being processed in the sterile processing departments for a lot of these growing health systems. I mean, those clinics are multiplying rapidly, and many of these productivity metrics are not giving credit to the department if it's tied to the OR productivity standard and case minutes or case volume. And all these other ancillary clinics are sitting more and more instruments every single day, every single week. And without that capacity understanding to be tracking that data, you would never see it from the C-suite. Like, why is it taking so long? Why do I have all this overtime, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's because we're going, guys. So that's a very, very important conversation. I know I promoted at the end of episode 1 that we're going to be talking about tribal knowledge on this episode, but I'm going to hold off on tribal knowledge for episode 3 because I really want to have plenty of time to get in depth for this. And we spent good conversations, though, on this episode talking about the pref card issue, the capacity issue, and just the major gap out there. So this one's going to stand alone as it is. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I know you're already hooked. If you care about data at all, you're already hooked for this conversation. I don't even have to tell you to tune in next time because you're coming back. But just in case, we're going to be diving into the tribal knowledge, and we're going to talk about the risk of shortfalls that come into play with a lack of good data. So hang here with us. We'll see you back again on the next episode of Now You Know. And until we see you then, keep fighting dirty.